Welcome back to Mr. DuPage's classroom. Today's lesson is for my Algebra 1 class. It is lesson 1.6. We're going to go over mean, median, mode, and range. This is basically the trends within a data set. Let's get right into the lesson. Please make sure, as always, that your date is up in the top right hand corner. The first thing that we're going to look at is some vocabulary. The first vocabulary we're going to look at, the measure of central tendency. The measure of central tendency is the central trend. What that means is basically what is the trend that falls into the center of the data that we're looking at, or the pattern of the data set. The pattern of the data set. Okay? The next thing we want to look at is the outlier. An outlier is a number or numbers, a number or numbers that do not fit the data. Easy way to think about this, if I say I have in my data set the numbers 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, and then 50. 50 obviously just doesn't fit. It will be pretty obvious when you see an outlier. The range, as it refers to data, it's going to be the highest data value minus the lowest data value. All right, let's look at some examples. The three measures of central tendency are mean, or the average, median, and mode. We'll also look at some range and outliers in these problems. The definition of mean, basically average, we will add all of the numbers and divide by how many numbers there are. The median, what we need to do, it's going to be the middle data point, but we need to make sure that all the data points are in order. I just usually rewrite the data points from smallest to largest. That way I know they're all in order. The mode is the data point that occurs most often. The range we talked about above, it's going to be the highest data value minus the lowest data value. We'll just write from above there. And the outlier we also have already defined above. So we'll just write from above there as well. So looking at our first set 1 here. To find the mean, we need to add all of those numbers up. So I'm going to add 4, 5, 1, 3, 2, 1, 1, and 7. When I add up all those numbers, I end up with 24. How many numbers were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll take 24, divide by 8, that equals 3. So the mean for that first set of data is 3. The median, like I said before, we need to put those in order. You can either go from largest to smallest or smallest to largest. I tend to always go from smallest to largest. If you have more than one of the same number, you do need to write that down still. So I have 3 ones. I have a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 7. In order to figure out the median, it's going to be the centermost number. So I'm going to cross out the first number and the last number. The second number, the second to last number. The third number, third to last number. In this case, there are two numbers that are right in the center. What we are going to do is we're going to find the mean of those two numbers. So I'll take 2 plus 3, divide by 2. It will end up being 5 over 2 or 2.5, either way. I would rather you write it as 5 over 2, but you could write that as 2 over 5 or 2.5. The mode is the number that occurs most often. If you look back over here at set number 1, I have the number 1 showing up how many times? 3 times. No other number repeats. So the mode is just going to be the number 1. It is simple as that. The range is the largest number. What is the largest number in my data set? It is 7. So it'll be 7 minus the smallest number, which is 1. In this case, I do not have to use the number 1 more than once. I'll just subtract it one time. So 7 minus 1 would be 6. That is my range. An outlier. In this case, the numbers are so close together that there isn't really an outlier. They're all pretty close to each other. An outlier would be if 27, 50, 90 popped up in that data set, then there would be an outlier. So in this case, no outlier. Or none. You could just write none there. Set 2. Same thing for the mean. I'm going to add up all those numbers. When I add up all those numbers, I'm going to end up with 44.5. How many numbers were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 44.5 divided by 5 will end up being 8.9. Okay? The median, we need to put them in some type of order, either smallest to largest or largest to smallest. I go largest or smallest to largest all the time. So 7, 8, 8.5, 9, and 12. Cross out the 7, cross out the 12. Cross out the 8, cross out the 9. There's only one number in the middle. It is 8.5. Okay? The mode, we're looking for any number that repeats. In this case, I do not have any number that will repeat, so we would write no mode. The range, highest minus the smallest, so it would be 12 minus 7, which is just 5. The outlier, looking at those numbers, what do you think? Do we have an outlier? No, we do not. So we can just write none or no outlier. Finally, set 3. Again, you need to add up all those numbers. When we add up all those numbers, we end up with 627 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 627 divided by 9 would be 69.6 repeating, or 69.67. Okay? The median, again, we need to put these in some type of order. I do it smallest to largest, so 22, 22 would be 33, 33, 44, 55, 66, 99, and 253. Get rid of the smallest, get rid of the largest. Then the next ones, then the next ones, the next ones, and we should end up with the number 44. For the mode, you can have more than one mode. It is possible. In this case, 22 repeats twice and 33 repeats twice. So my mode would be 22 and 33. The range, largest minus the smallest. So 253 minus 22. 253 minus 22 would end up being 231. Now, looking at that data set, everything is under 100 except for 253. So for the outlier in this problem, it would be 253. Let's figure out what the best measure of central tendency is now. For set 1, we have no outlier. We have no outlier for set 1. That is important. Usually when there is no outlier, your best measure of central tendency will be the mean. The reason why that is the mean takes numerical value into account. In this case, it is more reasonable that 3 is closer to 4, 5, and 7 than 2.5, which is between 2 and 3, is not as close to what you would consider the center of those numbers. So in this case, 3 is closer to the center between 7 and 1 than 2.5 is. That means that we're looking for the center. We're looking for the most central tendency, okay? Set 2, again, no outlier. Here we could possibly use mean or median. They are both pretty centralized. I would tend to use the mean myself. Again, they're both close to the center of the ordered data. But being that your smallest is 7, your highest is 12, I'm going to pick the higher of the two, so I would use mean. For set 3, now there is an outlier. Okay? When there is an outlier, your best measure of central tendency when you are working with numbers is actually going to be the median. Because the median will get rid of the outlier in one of your first movements, whether it be a low outlier or a high outlier, the median does not take that number really into account. So also the median in this case is closer to the center because 253 throws off our mean. So what we just learned there basically is if there is no outlier, we want to use the mean. When there is an outlier, we'll use the median. We'll talk about when we'd use the mode the most. So mean is the best measure of central tendency when there is no outlier. Median is the best measure of central tendency when we have an outlier. And mode is the best measure of central tendency when the data is not numerical. So how you can think of that is, say I'm getting data about shirt color or hair color or whatever you want to think about. Talk about shirt color right now. Blue would come up the most often because that's what's getting worn the most. That would be your mode. You're not talking about actual numbers. You're talking about colors at that point. And because of that, we're just going to look for what shows up the most. The trend at the time is how you can think of that, especially with clothes. Things to note. Note 1. Regarding the mode, if none of the data items occur more than once, there is no mode. But you can also have more than one mode. We did talk about that before. Note 2, the range must be positive. The reason why it must be positive is because it is the largest data value minus the smallest data value. All right, let's move on to the back. I want you guys to go ahead and try 1 and 2. Give yourself, I don't know, 2 minutes or so. And so go ahead and pause the video now, get to work. When you get done, go ahead and restart the video. Three, two, one, and go. All right, so for number one, your mean should be 15. Your median should also be 15. And your range should be 5. If you got those all correct, then you are good to go. Otherwise, and you can fast forward here in 1 second, otherwise I will go back and show you how to get those. For problem number 2, your mean should be 36. Your median should be 28. Your mode, there is no mode. What else occurs in number 2 though? That's what that little what else is talking about. What else occurs in number 2? I would say that there's an outlier. That 64 is pretty far away from 24, 30, and 26. So there's an outlier. I would say it is 64. One thing that's not on here that we really need to worry about is the range. The range in this case should be 5. I'm sorry. Number 1, the mode is not 5. It should be 17. I apologize. The range is 5. The range in number 2 should be 40. What would be the best measure of central tendency for number 1? Well, it would be the mean or the median. I would say the mean because there is no outlier. But in this case, they're both the same, so you could say either or. Best measure of central tendency for number 2 would be the median because there is an outlier. Okay? For those of you that got all that correct, you can go ahead and move on. Go ahead and fast forward until I start talking about number 3. For those of you that did not, let me go back and show you why or how I got those numbers. So for number 1, the mean, we add up all the numbers. When you add them all up, it should be 75. We should divide by 5. That's how I got 15. Okay? For the median, they're already in order, so I can just cross off 12, 17, 14, 17. The center number is 15. For the mode, 17 is the only number that repeats, so that's how we got 17. And for the range, we would take 17 minus 12 to get 5. For number 2, if you did not get that one correct, I would add up all the numbers. When I add up all the numbers, I end up with 144. There are 4 numbers, so 144 divided by 4 is 36. There's not really any room right there to rewrite the median down where it's at, so I'm just going to rewrite it above. So it would be 24, 26, 30, and 64. Get rid of 24, 64. You have 26 and 30 in between. So I would take 26 plus 30. That would be 56. 56 divided by 2 would be 28. No mode because no number repeats. And your range would be 64 minus 24. That would be 40. All right, let's move on to number 3. Hillary takes 5 tests each quarter in her English class. Her first 4 test scores were 88, 72, 83, and 70. What must she score on her 5th test to have an average of at least 80? Well, when you see the word average, we're working with mean. Mean means we're going to add up all of her test scores. So using the data that it gives us, I'm going to add all that up. So I have 88 plus 72 plus 83 plus 70. Now it says she has taken 5 tests. Right now I only have the scores for 4 of them. So I need to use a variable. I will add x for my variable. When we do mean, we add up all the numbers and divide by the number of data points. In this case, there would be 5 tests, so we divide by 5. Well, since I have a variable, I can't quite add that variable in together. So what I need to know is what percentage is she looking to have as her final average. So I'll set this all equal to that percentage, which is 80. She wants to have at least an 80. When I add up 88, 72, 83, and 70, I'll end up with 313 plus the last test divided by 5 will still equal our 80. Okay? Now, I need to try to get the x by itself. In order to do that, I must get rid of my denominator first. So I will do the opposite. 313 plus x over 5 means division. So I need to do the opposite to get the 5 out of there. So I'll multiply the 5. Anything I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'll multiply both sides. These would actually cancel out. So what I'm left with is 313 plus x is equal to 80 times 5 is actually 400. Now to get x by itself, right now I have addition, so I would need to subtract the 313. So x would equal 87. She would need to get an 87% on that final test in order to have an average of at least 80%. Every time that you have a story problem, you need to give me a label. In this case, it would just be percent. So she would need to get an 87%. I want you to go ahead and try number 4 on your own. So go ahead and pause the video right now. Take some time to get it done. As soon as you have completed it, go ahead and restart the video. 3, 2, 1, and go. All right, at the end of number 4, you should have ended up with x equals 84%. If you did that, then you did a great job. That is the end of our lesson for mean, median, mode, and range. Your homework is actually going to be out of the book, so we will take care of that tomorrow for you. And great job. If you did not get it correct, I will show you how to do it once again. It's asking for the average, so we're going to use the mean. It gives us 3 data points, but it says we have 4 tests, so I need to add up those 3 data points. 92 plus 96 plus 88. The 4th test, we need to use a variable. It's out of how many data points? Well, 4. And she wants to average at least a 90. So it'll be equal to 90. When I add up 92, 96, and 88, I'll end up with 276 plus x, because I still don't know what her 4th score is going to be. Divide that by 4. It would be equal to 90. I need to get this 4 out of the denominator, so I will do the opposite. So multiply by 4, multiply by 4. These 4's cancel. Would leave me with 276 plus x equals 90 times 4 is 360. I would subtract the 276 because it's opposite of adding. X would equal the 84%. All right. That concludes our lesson for the day. Remember, the most important topics that we talked about here are what an outlier is. It's a data point that does not fall in line with the rest of the data points in your data set. The measure of central tendency, it's just really looking for a trend. It's looking for the middlemost data point, okay? The mean is just your average. The median is just the most center data point when you have them all in some type of organization. So either smallest to largest or largest to smallest. The mode is just the data point that shows up the most. The range is just the largest data point minus the smallest data point. We already talked about the outlier. Remember also that the mean is your best measure of central tendency when you do not have an outlier. The median is your best measure of central tendency when you do have an outlier. If you remember those things from this lesson, you should do fairly well moving forward. And thank you very much. Have a great day.